Before man could think, life was crude, point blank, and in your face. Now it is softer. For the crowd, this is good. For a few, not so good. Originality takes no prisoners. Creative thought forgoes recall. How to watch sports. If you don't get involved with the fans in the stands, you see better the game on the field. With eyes men see, and with eyes they are blinded. One man wrote a book, How to Think Better, and people thought about buying it. Life is like a cable with a central core wrapped in two external strands. The strands are ever-changing, polarized reality, while the core is the impartial, genetic one. Man's collective reality, through such things as religion, morality, and civil law, tells him how he should behave, while the independent traveler tunes in to another level of directions. Down through the years, anger sure has gotten a bad rap. Yet everyone keeps doing it. What gives? How to watch thought processes. One guy said, pick a topic, any topic, and he did. In the model of life as a triaxial cable, you could also picture the two outer strands as representing partisan thought and the central core as unaligned consciousness. 1, 2, 3. A treasure uncovered, a myth unbound, a superhero freed from his civilian clothing. There is no such thing as mass delusion, only the individual kind. The collective always sees things correctly. That is, they see them as they need to be seen. How to watch being human. One man thought, crying's good for you, as long as you don't do it. All human advancement comes through attempts to reform and improve the existing. The trick is to do it individually and without the criticism that normally accompanies such efforts. Comforting thought. Comforting thought is comforting thought is comforting thought that makes you feel comfortable. Advanced version. Comforting thought is comforting thought is comforting thought that keeps you from being rebellious. The totality of life, the three-layered cable, forever seems to advance, expand, seeks to advance, expand, and improve itself. The two outer strands do so in an intermittent, indirect fashion, while the core serves as the steady supply of fuel and directions. To an individual, the problem with man's collective efforts at improvement is that they're all too impersonal. Any thoughts you have that make you angry or upset are unworthy of a human. How to watch physics. It takes 3 people to dance, and no one can lead forever. Although at the collective level, life runs man at a determined speed, it still wants individuals to go faster. When a man tells you specifically the kind of guy he is, he's giving you an advanced synonym for his present condition. One man nicknamed the moldy underside of his tongue Moody Two Shoes. Life in the collective waters. In a sense, it is those already floating corpses who so fervently exhort everyone to swim. There'd be a sermon in that one for any Baptists here that are hard up for a topic come Sunday. Prognostication observed. One guy's position. I can't predict the future, but I can tell you that the past sucks. A, B, C. Hate your fellow man, hate yourself, give it all up. Collective progress measured. People pay more for information than for food. All right, collective progress measured when people pay more for information than for food. There is a majesty and splendor about the impartial that few ever recognize. Individual progress measured. When you walk alone, it's hard to describe. Before man could talk about fighting, he could fight. Before he could talk about running, he could run. And before he could talk about dying, he could die. Now, who here wants to live afresh before having to talk about it? The religious and weekend warriors are taught by others. A few, impossible though it be, do it to themselves. One man's latest personal motto is, don't be afraid not to be mad. If you think mostly of how things are, you're not as conscious as you could be. To think in the future is to be free. All mystics were initially artists. Some painted on themselves, some wrote on themselves. But they all ended up sculpting themselves. Showbiz news. One guy wanted to be discovered. Real life news. You got to discover yourself. The original, I sort of hinted at in here, but the original legend, the actual legend of the cable says that the core, you remember my model, that the core drives and directs life, and it's the outer two strands that give it character and substance. Life, as per one that I did not pull out, but I just read, life wants everyone to do better. But from a certain view, the problem is that it does not collectively, does not publicly make available the kind of information or assistance that would help the individual. This is what makes it so easy for even would-be systems of some sort of mystical, secret, transcendental effort, makes it so easy for it to start out, or for it to take a position that it is being critical of something. And it can even try to narrow it down as though that they are not that interested in the mundane world, and that therefore they're not criticizing Caesar, that they're only criticizing the non-Roman efforts, the non-routine efforts. But you are left also, if you recall me pointing out, that all religions, to use that as a public form of self-improvement, attempted improvement on a collective level, that all religions, all the great ones that you know, all began as an attempt to reform some existing, quote, religious situation. They succeed in the fact that the religions that they sought to reform, to improve, to advance, the names are not even remembered. And those of you who are getting good at this, it's worse than they're not remembered, they're not known. And an ordinary mind would say, well, that's why they're not remembered, nobody knows them. See, as always, it's ordinary people end up either being too hot or too cold, and you tell them they got their overcoat on inside out, and they'll say it's impossible, especially to get it inside out on me while still wearing my brassiere. Even Houdini couldn't pull that off. No offense to you, members of the American Magicians Association. Even attempts that are well known enough to have some sort of name are still based on the situation that they always do. They point out man's current position, and then they offer their solution. They offer a new goal. They offer a new name and call it a new goal. But it's always on the basis that whatever the prevailing, even non-routine action is. Let me take something far afield so that it doesn't sound so abstract. Let's pick out Zen. And I just picked it out because it's a word you know. I could call it Sufi activity or Christian mysticism or the Jewish study of what they consider their mystical system. I could call it anything, but let's say Zen because it's one syllable and it's easy to say. Plus, most of you don't know anything about it, and that makes it better. All right, let's assume we're talking about a fictitious example I'm making up of some Zen school, let's say right now in the Western world, in the United States, that by all appearances and by their own profession, by their own claims, are involved in one thing, and that is the individual enlightenment of people, or the enlightenment of the individual. They still have to take the position that you are not enlightened now. I know those of a rhetorical bent would say, well, you've got to assume that they're not enlightened. Yeah. Just, it's a good thing that you can't really bet on that, or all you people would lose your shirts if you had one. But you have to assume, and those who hear it, if you decided that I want to do something very specific, I will give up my life, I'm going to go join some group of people who are involved full time, and you hear that there's a new Zen group, a new Zen school in the mountains somewhere here in the United States, and you just hear good things about it, and it's really on the cutting edge of Zen. It's on the cutting edge of human evolution, and that they are actively involved. That's all they're doing. It's not a business. It's not a sham. It's not built around some hero worship of some egomaniac there, and it just sounds just right to you. But it's still on the basis for you to go there, and I'm using the general Buddhist terms, of course, that let's say that they're calling it the intent is to enlighten one, to open your eyes to the reality of life. That presupposes that you're not enlightened. That presupposes that there is some flaw, that there is something wrong with humanity, that they cannot see that. Speaking for you and I both, I am hoping tonight will make some of you see why I keep referring to this for the last several weeks, that they have to do this, because it's not a commentary on Zen, it's not a commentary on known mystical systems. It has to do with trying to get from, dare I say it, God, have I got away with words, from point A to point somewhere else. I'm not going to say B. It's wet enough here without drowning in an additional overflow of cliches. You have to start to try and do something at the sequential level, at the level at which the outer strands of reality, according to that legend, the original, it's the external circumstance. It is the polarized energy that you normally take, that your mind normally takes to be human life, to be life. It is the external, polarized, partisan, dancing, changing partners, leading, following, up and down, back and forth, that gives life, according to that legend, that actually gives life its substance and character. It's what makes things appear to have actual substance and gives them their particular flavor, gives that you can tell one thing from another. It is on that same basis that you start out, let's I'll make up another fictitious person, that you are really just almost a fated to be mystic, that you're just born and bred for it. You start out at an unavoidable disadvantage because you start out believing that you're at a disadvantage. The first thing you hear when you hear that there's a call, that you hear that you're at some early age, and you pick up a book, you hear some comment, and it's a description of the same itch that you have, and you find out, Jesus, 2,000 years ago somebody had it and it's still going on. And you feel somewhat relieved that now you feel as though, well, there's some rational basis, if it's a minority basis, but there's some rational basis. Other people smart enough to write a book like this, it's been reprinted for 2,000 years, had the same interest. So I am not just a solo idiot. I am not deranged in a unique manner. But you are starting off at a collective disadvantage, because the collective disadvantage is that collectively everyone believes that there is a disadvantage, and therefore you have got to fight your way out of this pit. And the pit, until you see what it is, ends up being like a hole dug in a desert, in a sand dune, that you're never going to get out. Or those of you that prefer it at sea level, you fight the tar baby. And what people normally consider to be some form of personal effort on their part, or some mystical effort, is like a lifetime of training for a 9-inning series of rematches with a tar baby. I like it too. I did it for you several nights ago and didn't get much reaction. But think about it. It's not just making fun of people. That is what it amounts to, that you are trying to get out of a pit dug in a sand dune. In case you didn't get that one. Try and climb out. Let somebody dig a 20-foot hole down a sand dune and drop you in there, and you try to get out. Unless, contrary to conventional wisdom, you can practice flapping your arms and fly. Unless that works, you'll never get out. And in a sense, the more you try to get out, the less likely it is to get out. You start off at the collective disadvantage. You cannot start out above that or past that line. You start out when you first find some notion of some extraordinary effort or this great tradition, the secret work. You go, yes, 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 yes. But it starts on the basis that you need it. Yes, yes, yes. Well, at least you start off, I want it. When you hear it, yes, that's it. They're describing exactly the way I've been feeling. 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, somebody's, yes. What a relief. I guess, it'd be like finding out, at some early age that you're horny. And suddenly you find out, well, Jesus, everybody's horny. Or everybody has been horny. I was trying to think of a fairly nice one. I censored myself. I had a worse example. I knew they'd have to edit it. In other words, it's finding out that you think, boy, am I weird. And then you find, well, wait a minute. I'm not that weird. My parents are weird. They had to be weird once or I wouldn't be here, to use the horny example. So there's a kind of relief to find out that this has been going on, that people, not absolute outcasts, not absolutely deranged, people have had this interest, this desire, this itch long before me. So you feel like, well, I'm at least on better ground. You have now just sort of got to the starting line of a great mystical race. But you start off at a place of a collective disadvantage because you believe, well, I am at a disadvantage. There is something wrong with humanity. And if you do have the makings of would-be mystic, it is not on a form of individual criticism, as I keep pointing out to you. It's not that you turn around and go, I knew it, the whole world sucks. If you fall into that, then I'm not speaking to you anyway. You wouldn't be hearing it, because that gets you off of the main track and you don't worry about that much anymore. The rest of your life you can just, at least at a low level, kind of simmer and just kind of scoff at the idiots with whom you're surrounded, by whom you're surrounded. Thank you. The disadvantage is, and you can't escape it, remember, that you start off thinking we're at a disadvantage. There is a flaw in life. That yes, indeed, maybe you thought you were smart enough to take, say, the Jewish Christian story of creation, that we are cursed. that that in some way the story could have been better to use to try and combine Zen with that. It was like I could make the story that Ken and Barbie originally were given over to this great garden of paradise, and the sun always shone. Always shone. The water temperature was always in the 70s. They had a beach umbrella, cooler full of beer, and the big guy said, "Live it up, but whatever you do, don't you piss in the water," or something. And he caught them doing it, or eating the sand of life, or whatever it is. And then he made the clouds come out. He made it overcast, and so now the whole thing is, instead of being a Christian, that's what enlightenment is. You're struggling to make the big guy happy, that we now live at a disadvantage. It's not completely overcast. It's not completely dark. He didn't blot out the sun. But he got so mad, he now made, at least internally, metaphorically, he has clouded your skies. He lowered your consciousness, your ability to see, to directly perceive life. And so now the effort is, enlightenment is, to blow away those gray skies, those dark clouds, so it'd be forever internal sunshine, and you would be as fully conscious and perceptive as possible. See, you start out being unable to escape that there is a flaw. Every creation story there is nowhere on this planet, and it's not their fault. That simply reflects the individual wiring system in humanity. So don't blame it on the religions or the stories, but do notice there is no creation story. From the well-known religions to obscure local tribal stories in Africa and Asia and the North Pole and Lapland. We don't want to go into that one. Trust me. Whoa, no. Anyway. And don't you find it interesting, now that I'm about to point out to you, there is no creation story on this planet that survived over 2 weeks, that they continue to tell, that the creatures, right after they were created, screwed up.
Yeah.
And got cursed to varying degrees. That the gods, whether they lived in a tree, or they were the clouds, or they were Zeus, or they were Yahweh, or Allah, or somebody, just very shortly, he made the creatures, and he made them, so he said everything's fine. Very shortly, they did something, and he put a curse on them. He crippled them in some way, lowered their sight, lowered their consciousness. He did something. It is not the fault of religion. It's not the fault of stories. This is the wiring system being incomplete. And people never feel as though they're finished, that they're a completed work. And it has turned into, which it could have been something else, but that was just as good as any, it has turned in now to a feeling that we have in some way gone astray. Or, the one I tried to pull on you several times, who's going to get out and fix a flat unless they think they have one? No one. No one but an idiot. And then they're going to get run over in traffic. That's why they're not part of the middle class, and you don't find them down the middle of the highway. You start off at the disadvantage that something is wrong. I repeat one more time, it is inescapable. You must start there. But if you never get past that point, you'll forever fight tar babies. You'll forever try to climb out of a sand dune pit. Then you're faced with, I'll get back to the specific of mystical systems being caught there, but I wanted to expand it tonight to the fact that life truly wants everyone to do better. And on that basis, as part of the sitting duckism, why life at the civilized level is so easily parodied, when it is so easy to criticize and define life to be, at best, ironic, and at worst, moronic. And it's this. Life is continually driving through man to do better. Yeah. I can start playing with words, but do better. To advance, to expand itself, but it's do better. That should be enough for any mystic, because any mystic should be able to separate that from morality or religion or any particular outlook. It's just do better. Everybody knows what life is, doing better. Those who know it don't have to talk about it. You just, yeah, I know, okay. Because there's nothing to say. Life is always seeking to do better. By the way, life does not fail, since life has no competition, in case you hadn't noticed. It continually is driving, seeking to do better, and does so. Since the individual does not feel as though he is a personal recipient of this continual advancement, then the individual always feels as though I am in some way not walking fast enough. I am in some way wandering off the path. I am in some way got lost to start with. Or those who are not so verbose, they just feel like, well, I screwed up. All their life they feel as though that even if it's not religious or moral, they always feel like there's some kind of black cloud, some kind of special one, kind of following me around. You just never feel exactly right. But notice this is, one more time, or in a different way, is limited to humans, because you've got to be able to think to do better, to feel as though you should do better. Because from the level of consciousness down, anything not mental, you're not supposed to do better. You're supposed to survive. There is no doing better. You survive or you don't. You eat the right food or you don't. And it doesn't have to be according to somebody's, including the government's, nutritional suggestion. It's just you either survive or you don't. There is no doing better. You can't better survive. That's for people really hard up for a hobby. That is, if I exercise, if I get stronger, I'll live longer. You notice they never get around to saying, well, if I could ever get all the stamps in this one book collected, I'd live longer, which is the same thing. Except that seems that you can't even physically begin to rationalize that one or support it, whereas physically you can. Because you can say, well, look how poorly all dead people look. And you go, well, yeah. And they go, look at me, I've lost 60 pounds and I put on some muscle and I gave up eating sugar. Anyway, it makes people really hard up for a hobby that don't like to go to the post office or lick stamps or put them in those little plastic things. It's a real cheap hobby, thinking I'll get healthier and I'll survive better. You either survive or you don't. That's the end of that hobby in reality. It is only at the mental level that man can do better. It's at the mental level, insofar as of any great interest. This is not absolutely true, of course, as nothing is. It's not that life does not do better on a non-mental level, but what the hell do we care? We're talking about humans. I thought somebody appreciated it. In other words, life may be over in far corners of the universe, or even nearby. Life may be causing, I'm just making this up, it may be causing Jupiter to get a little warmer, a little more intelligent. Well, in a non-mental sense. But who cares? We're humans. What the hell do we care about that, right? Right, okay. I just wanted to settle that. The only things human cares about are humans. So the only way that you feel as though you're going to do better is above the level of consciousness. You've got to be human to have any sensation that you should do better. And the only thing of interest to us is life striving continually, and remember, not failing, striving, seeking to do better through man. Since it operates at such a slow, such a collective, such a mass speed, at a rate of speed which is actually beyond the ordinary mind to even measure any speed, then people feel as though, in their mind, which can feel, it says, that they feel as though I am behind, I have missed the mark, I've wandered off the path, etc. So it is there, I went through all that to show you. I didn't want anyone, when I said all creation stories and all religions, of course, say that man is not doing what he should. And they have been beaten about, religions and other things, philosophy, civilization itself, for those with a real broad brush and more sarcasm than they have a palate for. You just attack everybody. Just, that's why I said it becomes a matter that the whole world is nuts. The whole world is composed of idiots. Hypocrites. Because the rate of speed at which life is seeking to do better collectively through man does not affect the individual at an ordinary man's mind, that kind of individual, it does not affect him. He does not perceive it. Contrary, the sensation is, I should be doing better. So it's not religion's fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's not your parents' fault for making you feel the big G. Gritty? Guilty. It's no one's fault. No one caused you to feel guilty. I know that guilt is, especially today we might say, very open to condemnation all the way still from the anti-religious to just people who are anti-establishment to the academic world of psychology and psychiatry. That guilt, that's really, we should not be doing that. We shouldn't be passing along to our children. We shouldn't be feeling guilt. We just should be living decent, psychologically healthy lives and not feel guilty. Which sounds like a neat hobby, but I point to again, that's suicidal. It does not happen. That is a sign, as proof that you are sane and upright if you feel guilty. And I'm not going to stop and discuss psychology. You obviously should know when I say that if you're feeling so guilty that you can't get out of bed in the morning, that kind of thing, and you blame it on guilt, notwithstanding the few of you that keep using that to keep from having to get a job. Right? See, some of you, I remember before it was that, it was your back, and then then it was you was depressed about the Vietnam War. I figured the ultimate's going to finally be some of you won't get out of bed because you're so depressed over them cutting down on unemployment checks. And it's all you can do. I get out of bed once a week or whatever it is and go get yours. That is kind of depressing, but anyway. Well, everyone knows the idea of you shouldn't feel guilty nowadays. It's fairly common, and it's easy to attack religion and to say, well, that's one of the that has been one of the malfunctions, one of the grosser acts of religion in general is to make people feel guilty by telling them they're sinners or that they made God mad. Tut, tut, tut. People that say that, they've got less understanding than some poor old woman or man who is on their knees lighting candles and feeling guilty, in a sense. They understand less, because if you're alive and sane, you feel guilty. You can wrestle with the word, but remember, you can wrestle with a tar baby. You can say, no, I don't. If you're sane, if you're just an ordinary, walking around, upright, ordinary person, you feel guilty. If it was any consequence, we could dig up more words and you'd finally go, well, yeah, that. But guilt is as good as any. You feel guilty in the fact that you cannot individually do that which life is driving humanity collectively to do. Those who cannot, in a sense, this is one explanation, those who cannot bear that become mystics. Life is making the parade move. I keep saying life won't. You understand I'm using literary license. That's why I said life doesn't fail. But it's like life is urging everyone, collectively, everyone, except for those dumb enough to get out and change a flat when they don't have the fringe. You remember, we're always talking about the only people I'm comparing mystics to are ordinary sane people. Your mothers and fathers, your neighbors, ordinary people, not fringe, not idiots, not drunks, and etc. But the majority of mankind, the squares, the boobs, the bourgeoisie. Life is pushing everyone. Life itself is doing to itself. But we're back to humans. What the hell do we care about life? Let it look after itself. We're interested in people. All right. So life is pushing everyone. Now I'm talking about everyone. Catholics, Jews, Italians, Irish, Muslims, Buddhists. Everybody. That's what civilization is about. But it makes civilization and all of its institutions an absolute sitting duck. Because it's pushing everyone to do better, but it's not pushing everyone to do better collectively enough that every individual feels as though, well, I'm moving fast enough. Contrary, they're not. But that is part of the fuel, that is part of the energy that keeps it all going. So it is easy for a person to pop up here and there, and we're not talking about persons, I use that as an example, we're talking about in you. to turn around and criticize. Even if and very often it can appear to be quite well-founded, can appear to be intellectually based, that you can pull out all sorts of historical and literary allusions and allegories, to point out the king's naked. He got no clothes on. But once you understand that there is no alternative, that's a sign in the same way to find that all of man's institutions, civilization itself, is based on irony. It is hypocritical. It is flawed. Nothing succeeds. Nothing can fulfill its aims. And you think, well, they're so dumb, they don't even realize that. Why don't they lower their aims? Why don't the church? Why don't politics? Why doesn't science? At least instead of having this credo of here's what we stand for, after all these thousands of years, why don't they get together and go, we look like idiots. We're walking around with our pants falling down. Let's take the goals we stated and cut them 90% and really lower it down, and then we'll get somewhere. See, that's the same thing as saying individually, well, we shouldn't have guilt. You might as well say, well, I shouldn't be mentally healthy at the ordinary level. Civilization, therefore, all of man's collective efforts are open to any criticism that you can render. It's just a matter of whether you're just a crude person, go, or as I said, if you end up writing a column for an important paper and have a suit and tie and an education. You can use big words. Anti-dissident, whatever the thing is. Big words, and you can make the president, make the pope, make any religion, make them look like idiots in print. The bon mots roll off of your tongue like little chocolate-covered. What's those depth charges that have spikes going in all directions, but they're like chocolate-covered, and But that is no talent. Contrary is why I keep sort of picking on criticism with you people individually, is to find something wrong with civilization. All that shows is that civilization, that is life collectively, is healthy. Because it will never succeed. It's not the job of a religion. It's not the job of anything collectively to succeed. Because if man collectively succeeded, the parade would suddenly come to a halt and the air would go out of everyone. The parade would collapse. It'd be mass suicide. You'd have lemmings standing around behind a tree laughing at us going, life is urging. On a more positive side, I was trying to get you to see, not only, I'm hoping I made the point, that to find criticism with anything that man does collectively, anything, just religion is just a great example, the government, the jurisprudence on this planet, the models of morality, anything that is part of the middle class, the sane culture, anywhere, at any time, to find fault with it, for you to be able to look at it and go, are they serious? Are they idiots? Are they listening to what they themselves say and then what they do? How can the Catholic Church say, we're here to help you and be your friend, and if you don't believe it, we got a portable rack we brought in from Seville. That sort of thing. That's just the easy one. The Catholic Church, that one, and the Inquisition. Like, God is love, and if you don't believe it, we'll kill you. Well, that is so easy. But to think, well, that takes some sort of insight, it takes no insight. That is life pushing man to do better. Contrary to religion or anything going on in the civilized world, which is the exclusive domain of above the level of consciousness, man, everything is failing from that view. Everything is falling apart. Everything is the Catholic Church saying, God is love, and if you don't believe it, we'll kill you. That is civilization. But the positive side is, as you should see, it is a continual encouragement, a pushing of man to do better. And for you to say, well, if you're an ordinary person, go, well, you say that they're encouraging man to do better, but man doesn't. What do you want from me? So you're supposed to ask your brain that. All of man's institutions, civilization itself, does an admirable job collectively. And if you don't understand that, you don't really understand anything. You're in a perpetual fog yourself. An idea of enlightenment is a Nice word. That's all you got. But you have got to see the parade that goes in fits and starts. As I point out with this, you can look at the strands surrounding two of the three forces running life. This whole thing is like moving. These strands, life is pushing itself to advance, to expand, to do better. This is man, represented. These two external strands, the way they move is always, you know what intermittent means? It's fits and starts. It goes here and there. And it's indirect. That's a lie, but I'm talking about by all apparent purposes. Well, it's not correct. Once you see it, you'll know what I mean. But by all intents and purposes, when you look at it from an ordinary level, even if you started off and you took it as a premise, if I said, life is always advancing. Life is always getting better. And if you say, all right, I'll take that as a, let's see where we go with that. Then you can say, well, wait a minute, how do you explain this? And you can point out something. How can you explain the Inquisition? Or how can you explain right now that one group of, one faction and one religion is trying to show another faction across town the error of their ways, and to do so they have resorted to destroying the city and killing all their children? How do you explain that? The progress is done at the manifest level, at the level at which it has character and substance. That is, the level at which the ordinary mind can perceive it. It is always intermittent and indirect from the ordinary view. The same as you can't walk a straight line. If I have to keep pulling up comparisons, a ballet dancer, a high wire guy that can do all this, you still can't walk a straight line. I guess you can say that he can do the unnatural for a few minutes to make a living. But you do know walking, just for instance, just physical, something crude, is if you ever see a film, anyway, trust me, but you can see a slow motion film, or you can feel it yourself, walking, no matter how graceful, bopping down the avenue, but just walking is a continual, intermittent process of I'm about to trip, and you catch yourself, and I'm about to trip. It's going on continually. That's what walking is. I'm about to fall, now I'm not, now I'm about to fall. That's exactly. At the ordinary level, the advance that the collective is making is intermittent. It's just the way it is. You don't take one breath, well, enough metaphors, enough symbols. It operates, it moves in an intermittent, indirect fashion from all ordinary views. It is therefore, at any particular time, by somebody, by some large segment of the population, always open to criticism. It always appears to be failing. It always appears, if you had the most graceful person in the world, if you had a ballet dancer, the world's greatest track runner, and you take a film of him and you stop it at just the right place, he'll look like a clumsy bastard. He'll look like a poster boy for spasticism. All you got to do is catch him in the right place and it looks like he's falling apart. You just stop the film there. That is the way in which life advances. And to believe that, well, I have seen it trip. I have seen the emperor with no clothes on. I have seen, contrary to you saying that life is making progress, right over here it's tripping. It is royally screwing up. Yes, but it will recover. And if you're a critic, you will not recover. Since I was pulling out the last few weeks, also some ordinary, well-known religious ideas, and trying to get you to consider the reality behind it and how they're always futuristic and how they are never expected to be exercised. They were not going to be realized. Is also consider all religions and even the humanist philosophy, civilized attitudes of all men have always encouraged tolerance. That we shouldn't be picking on other people. You shouldn't pick on another man's religions or his philosophy. It's just, don't do that. Why? I just told you why. Because whatever you see as a failure on their part, like, well, wait a minute, you cannot tell me that this group over here that worships such and such or believes such and such, you cannot tell me that that represents any sort of progress. You just caught the film right there as the guy was. It is intermittent. There is no way. Well, if you begin to see anything, there is no way that you cannot understand that civilization, that life itself is encouraging all men to do better. Remember, encouraging is kind of a little joke amongst us. It's like when life encourages, it's better than E.F. Hutton in its conversation. When life encourages man to do better, as I put it, I got news for you. People do better. There is no large segment of the human populace stands around after they feel the encouragement to do better, and they stand around and go hide out in an alley or get in a tree hut, bunch of kids, bunch of bored kids, and go, are we going to go along with this or not? Okay. Life is encouraging everyone to do better. Life in general is doing better. Humans are doing better. And it is represented by all of man's institutions, the very things that you want to start out attacking. The very thing that you think needs to be reformed, and with would-be mystics, it's beyond the idea of just mere reformation. It's like, I've got to abandon this, which leads into the ideas of finding secret caves, secret men, secret work, because you tend to turn around like being Lot's wife and brother-in-law, and you look upon the whole city of Sodom as being civilization. Whether you take it that seriously or not, you just look at it like, well, that's not what I want. It's a bunch of, they're just hypocrites, or they're stupid. They keep talking about the same things I'm interested in. Religion especially, it just talks exactly like I'm interested in. And I go try to talk to them, and they won't take up a collection, or they won't buy some cookies, or light a candle, or tell me not to worry about it. And so your inclination is, I'm going to go out and change the flat. I've got to improve this. It has got to be reformed. But then when you get just a little past that line and tend to become at least a weekend mystic, is you want to abandon the city. Which, remember, an ordinary mind cannot simply abandon something. That's why you have so many beautiful love sonnets from the early Middle Ages and good contemporary country and western songs about the difficulty of combining and executing simultaneously or within the same lifetime the two concepts of forgetting and forgiving. Shakespeare and Travis Tritt both understand that this is a problematic situation. So the thing is, the would-be mystic wants to leave the town, that he just wants to abandon it, which is all right, except if you do, which is why I poke fun in an informative attempt at hermits and recluses. It's like, I'm going to abandon civilization. I'm going to abandon the main parade. Well, that would be, if I may turn a phrase, well and good. If you can leave the city, if you can abandon Sodom and move up north of Bozeman, get out there in the woods by yourself, and then never think about Sodom again. Don't you would-be mystics and hermits and recluses lie to me, because I know you can't. Do you understand? Because if a man did leave civilization and go hide out in a tree or under a rock up in Montana to get away from the civilization, and I say, yeah, but you keep thinking about it. And he can say, no, I don't. Do you understand? That's a lie itself. His presence proves it is, because if he could quit thinking about it, he could come back. The reason he stays there, he can't understand it. He says, no, the reason I stay here, I don't even think about it, because I know what it was. I quit worrying about it. I just came up here and I'm happy now by myself. No, he's not. He thinks about it all the time. That's why he stays there. That's why he has to stay. Because if he could quit thinking about it, he could leave. Go somewhere neat like Juneau or Vladivostok. May I suggest, before we wrap up and take up the offering and baptize those fine farm animals I see some of you brought in tonight, make those little piggies good Methodists or Episcopalians, or what are we? I keep forgetting. Orthodox Cableites. That's it. Liberal firecracker salesman. It is a kind of, it's not moral, it's not spiritual, it's physical. It has to do with the physics running the human mind. You've got to get to the point beyond even the word of forgiving, because you understand what civilization is about, and there's nothing. It's not a rationale. It's not trying to drop the philosophy of, well, I will forgive people because they don't know what they're doing. You're an idiot. Life knows exactly what it's doing. Or you say, well, I'm just going to forget. I'm not going to worry about religion. I'll keep arguing with it, and I keep trying to see where they've gone astray. You're an idiot. You're blind. You should be in favor of, well, it is all. Civilization itself is a beautiful mattress, a pillow, a godsend, the wind at your back. It is a warm, sunny day to the crowd. People are doing better, but it's intermittent from an ordinary view. It is indirect. Some of my jokes about predicting and prognostication. The ordinary mind cannot see where the parade's going. It cannot see whether it's actually going forward or backwards. All it can do is take these discrete snapshots, which is what limited consciousness is, that you see it in the very way in which I made this model, that's cut up into pieces. The ordinary mind, ordinary consciousness, then will see a snapshot of something horrible going on, that is, the walker in the frame that he's about to fall over, and it cannot see that it is all supportive, people are doing better, and that all human institutions are encouraging him to do better. No matter how, you can take one discrete snapshot and say, well, there it is, a group of people said, God loves you, and if you don't believe it, we'll kill your ass. You still don't understand. It's all just, it's what all the cheap drunks and other weak people worry about. It is the ultimate support system. It's civilization itself. It is positive, it is supportive, it is liberal, it is progressive, once you see it. For a few, the problem then becomes this: that there's nothing wrong with Sodom, there's nothing wrong with the parade, there's nothing to abandon, there's nothing worthy of criticism. But once you understand that, then the problem, if you want to look at it as a problem, is that although life is collectively, that life is continually seeking the best and doing better through man, with man, it does not make available any sort of public information or the instructions as how an individual can do it. In other words, the parade, once you see, well, everything is all right, it couldn't be better, there's nothing wrong. Once you see that, then, rather than just being stuck with the old historical idea that something is wrong and that you've got to join some mystical group or any kind of group because something is wrong and I've got to make progress, or I've got to go and I've got to reform the parade, I've got to at least reform the part over here where I am. No. You're wanting one thing, even after you understand that this is all moving forward and everything is fine. And you understand, I'm not going to waste my time cursing stamp collectors. I'm not going to waste my time cursing religion or anything. It's all going just fine. What you're faced with, I was putting words on it for you, is an individual that strikes him, I want to go faster. Mm-hmm. Nobody else is going to go faster. You've got to be past all that, which is, I was trying to wrap up by saying you no longer have any question about the vitality, the validity, the health, the right direction of the collective parade itself. So you're not comparing you to somebody else and saying, God damn it, I wish it'd go faster so I could get somewhere. Mm-hmm. You still ain't got it. Mm-hmm. You understand this thing is going at the right speed. Whatever the hell that means, you just simply see that's the speed at which it's going. It's not your problem. It's not even your concern. It's got nothing to do with you other than the fact I individually want to go faster. Then you look around at all these sane, supportive, liberal, progressive institutions, civilization itself, all of the information available from the highest levels of academic, scientific information to the world of art, literature, and philosophy, to religion. You just scan the whole gamut and you realize there's no information there There's no direction, there's no instructions available that tell you individually how to do it. So if you want to call it a problem, that's the problem. But you've got to understand, pushing against the parade itself will not make you go faster. Criticizing it, so when I say push against it, resisting it, thinking about it. There's nothing to think about. It is whether you can do it individually. And the information, the directions, are not part of this character and substance. Remember, I started out tonight and I told you the initial legend of the cable. Since I made it up, I can give you the original. Don't let this get around. The original legend of the cable. And what it said in part was, it described that this is the reality of life. It's the core, which, may I suggest, represents a kind of splendor, of impartiality, of non-alignment that is very seldom recognized, which was another one right there in that stack. Go back to the initial legend. The very parts that give it character and substance, that is, life itself, as the human mind ordinarily knows it, this only gives it substance. This only brings it into apparent reality. The fuel, the direction, is here, in the core of it. But, this all worked in the three-dimensional world. That's why I made up this model. Notice these represent some kind of movement. If we consider this went on and on and on, it is spiraling around, the red and the blue, that these forces. And it's like this shows no movement. It's just this big old core. It's just there. And if anything's going on, it's around it. This is mysticism. This is the only place you can ever find any sort of individual instructions. Where you can find, it's actually, should make it a combined term of instruction / fuel. It's only here that you ever get an idea of what to do. But notice, it doesn't change, it doesn't move, not in the sense of this. It's not dancing, it's not attacking, it's not protecting, it's not fainting off, it's not shadow boxing. The more I talk about it, it's kind of boring.